Welcome to a special episode of Bible Study, Parody and Subversion in Matthew's Gospel. If you are new to this podcast, I encourage you to go to episode 1 and start there. Starting with episode 1, this podcast takes a journey through the Gospel of Matthew, unpacking its story of Jesus as a peasant leader of a nonviolent movement for a new society that he calls the Kingdom of Heaven. Each episode explores literary, cultural, and historical context, passage by passage. Since I finished going through the Gospel of Matthew in March of 2022, I have been occasionally adding special episodes, and that's what this episode is. This is a sermon that I preached with a friend recently. My friend is from Gaza. We dedicated our Sunday morning service to shining a light on the genocide now occurring in Gaza and spreading to the West Bank. This is the actual recording of the sermon, so the sound may be a little lower than usual, so you may need to turn up the volume to hear it. But without further delay, here it is. So in about 4 months, I'm going to be 60 years old. Thank you. Can't believe it. There are a couple things that I'm experiencing as I age. One of them is that I'm losing short-term memory. And I can't remember what the other one is. No, I wrote down the other one right here. Because I can't remember anything unless I write it down. Another one is that I cry easily. And it's embarrassing. I tend to cry when I see or hear beautiful things, and it creates some awkward situations. Doesn't have to be a big thing. Someone could be telling me that their dog is protective of their toddler, and I get all choked up, and I can't respond. It's awkward. Or I'll be watching some sappy video on Facebook or YouTube, and my brain will be telling me this is a dumb video. But my emotions seem to have a completely different neural system. Like it's one part of my brain that doesn't talk to the logic part of my brain, and tears will start streaming down my face, and if someone's around to see this, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to explain it. So I cry a lot. I also cry at sad and tragic things. When the genocide started in October 2023, I was an emotional mess. I'd been following the ethnic cleansing of Palestine for decades. I'd spent a few years of my childhood in Jordan, which is about 50% Palestinian. I had visited the West Bank as an adult with Christian peacemaker teams, where I witnessed a brutal system of apartheid and ethnic cleansing. What I witnessed was so horrible that I came close to having a nervous breakdown in the middle of that trip. So when the genocide started, I pretty much knew it would turn out the way it has. And I was immobilized at first, emotionally immobilized. I was having multiple crying fits every day. And then the one thing that rescued me was to see all the mostly young people marching in the streets, posting on social media. I had never seen such widespread support for the Palestinians. And I was thankful to Erica and Frank, who are here somewhere, for starting the vigil in front of Judy Chu's office. And out of my grief, I realized something, and out of my biblical reflection, and that is that genocides, holocausts, produce sacred texts. A lot of our Bible is shaped by genocide. A lot of the prophetic writings and the version of the Torah that we have is shaped by the Assyrian and Babylonian and Greek invasions and occupations and genocidal acts against ancient Israel, ancient Palestine. I think that's one reason we have such a hard time understanding them, because they come from an experience that is so different from ours. Most of us have never lived through such things. And I came to realize that the Gospels in the New Testament are also born of genocide. We don't realize that because they tell a story that happened before the genocide. The story they tell occurs in the early 1st century, when Israel suffered under a brutal occupation, an occupation by Rome, by which Rome extracted natural resources, exploited labor, levied heavy taxes, expropriated land, and put the peasants into ever-deepening debt, which resulted in widespread poverty, malnutrition, and in some cases starvation. This is the context of the Gospels, which many modern readers are usually not aware of. Naturally, the Israelites resisted this occupation, this severe oppression. They fought back. Some of the uprisings and rebellions, these are alluded to in the New Testament, but we miss these allusions because we don't know, we're unfamiliar with that history. Usually, the rebellions were easily put down by Rome. But in the year 66, the rebels mounted an unusually successful campaign. Some of the patterns should sound familiar, much like what has happened in Palestine in the 20th and 21st centuries up to the present moment. First, the rebels in 66, they mounted this unusually successful campaign. First, they took the fortress at Masada. Then they took Jerusalem, and they were able to hold it for 4 years against the Romans. But the Roman legions came. They carried out a scorched earth campaign through Galilee and Judea, destroying villages, slaughtering the inhabitants, and taking slaves. The Roman legions then surrounded Jerusalem, cutting off food, and finally retaking the city, slaughtering many of its inhabitants, taking thousands of them into slavery, and also crucifying thousands more. The Jewish historian Josephus reports that thousands of Jews were crucified on the hills surrounding Jerusalem. This was a genocide. Given the scene of thousands of Jews crucified on the hills, the whole destruction of Israel, the genocide, could be understood as the crucifixion of Israel, the crucifixion of the Jewish people. And it was after that the Gospels were written or came into their final form, a story about a Jewish Messiah who was crucified. While a minority of scholars do place the writing of Mark, the final form of Mark, earlier than these events, and definitely a lot of the material in the Gospels comes from an earlier time, most scholars place the writing of the Gospel of Mark around the year 70, the time of the destruction and crucifixion of Israel by Rome. And the other 3 Gospels come after that, all in the late 1st century. Anyone hearing a story of a crucified Jewish Messiah in the late 1st century would have been reminded of the crucifixion of the Jewish nation. And it was common in ancient literature for an individual to symbolize a whole community. There are numerous literary clues in the Gospels themselves that signal that Jesus embodies his people. For example, the term Son of Man, or the human one, which Jesus uses to refer to himself, is a collective image of Israel from Daniel 7. That's where it comes from. In the Gospels, Jesus embodies the Jewish people. And 3 of the Gospels actually speak of the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70. They describe it. Traditionally, this passage found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke is known as the Olivet Discourse, which makes it sound quaint. Modern scholars refer to it as the Little Apocalypse. In the siege of Jerusalem, the temple was destroyed. Ancient Jewish writers interpreted that event as God abandoning Israel. The temple was understood as the place where God dwelled. So when the temple was destroyed, that meant that God had left. And the people believed this could only happen if God allowed it to happen, so God must have abandoned them at a time when they were being crucified. God had abandoned them in their crucifixion. So the cry of Jesus from the cross is not just quoting a quote from Psalm 22. It is that. But it is Jesus through the psalm crying the cry of his people. My God, why have you abandoned us? Of the Jews that were left in the land after 70, some became Christians. Centuries later, many became Muslim, and some remained Jewish. And that is where the Palestinian people today come from. Recent genetic studies have confirmed this. So the occupation and ethnic cleansing of the last 77 years and the genocide in Gaza since October 2023 are things that Palestinians have endured before. It's in our Bible. When they happened to ancient Israel, they were happening to Palestinians. Our Bible is a Palestinian book, or a collection of Palestinian books. And what is going on now in Palestine is the same sort of thing as what shaped much of our Bible, especially the Gospels. So to talk about what is going on now, I'm going to invite our Palestinian friend, Hadab Tarifi, who is from Gaza and who has family in Gaza, many of whom have been killed, as Katerina described. As she comes up, I'm going to read her bio. Come up, Hadab. Hadab Tarifi was born in Gaza and lived in Kuwait until after the first Gulf War, when she moved to Los Angeles. Hadab has been active in the Muslim and interfaith communities in Southern California since 1994, working on building bridges and bringing people together. She served on the board of several Muslim nonprofit organizations, including New Horizons School, Los Angeles, Shura Council of Southern California, and Islamic Networks Group. She was elected to be the first chairwoman of both the Muslim Public Affairs Council in 2007 and the Islamic Center of Southern California in 2016. Hadab served and continues to serve on the boards of several interfaith groups or organizations such as University Religious Conference at UCLA, the Los Angeles Council of Religious Leaders, and the Academy of Judaic, Christian, and Islamic Studies. Hadab worked as an IM program manager at General Electric Energy for 20 years. She is now an IT consultant and financial coach. Hadab?
Thank you. Greetings of peace, everyone. And not only I'm grateful to be with you this morning, but I'm grateful for you to be honoring my family. When I come here, I come to be with my family as I mourn my blood family. And I share what Bert said about the weekly vigil on Monday. That not only revived my faith in humanity, it literally revived my faith in interfaith. For decades, I worked in interfaith and civically engaged with city leaderships, at least in the city of LA. And when October 7 happened, it was really heartbreaking for me because until today, the city of LA refused to call it a genocide. Thank God at least Pasadena had some effort to acknowledge what is happening. And I talked to a lot of people who sadly still don't acknowledge that it is a genocide. April actually is a month of education about genocide. At the moment, the Islamic Center of Southern California are having an educational session about genocide in Palestine, in Congo, and in Sudan. So this morning, after I finished my morning prayer, and I was thinking, let's go through the definition of genocide. What is genocide? Perhaps most of you know, but for those who are watching, and hopefully eventually you can share with, let's address what is a genocide. Genocide is a deliberate and systematic destruction of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. It's a crime against humanity and is considered the most serious crime under international law. So, some of the aspects of the definition. First one is intent. There must be specific intent to destroy the group in whole or in part. If you disagree that Israel is doing that, raise your hand. Targeted group. The acts must be committed against members of a group because they belong to that group. Systematic destruction. The destruction must be deliberated and organized, not just random act of violence. For almost a year and a half, that's what's been happening in Gaza. Not only Gaza, but now the West Bank. So as if Israel is getting ready to finish up Gaza and start phase 2 of the genocide in the West Bank. Protected group. The definition, protect national, ethnic, racial, and religious groups. Israel is committing genocide on all Palestinians, be it Muslims, be it Christians, or even be it Jewish Palestinians. Because anybody who's standing and saying no to Israel's apartheid status and activity in the occupied Palestinian territories, they get targeted. Actually, we're all targeted. Here, far away from Israel, we are still being targeted. Using a history of suffering of Jews to silence us, of sharing facts and sharing the truth. The situation in Gaza now is really not only heartbreaking, but for me personally, on a daily basis, I make an effort to get up, not cry all the time, collect my thoughts, sharpen my voice, stand with people who are like me, believe that it is each and everyone's responsibility not only to speak up, but to call for the end of the genocide, call for saving lives. And I know it is not easy for all of you because it is not easy for me. As of yesterday, both UNRWA and the International Food Bank said they literally ran out of food. Since March 2nd, not a single bottle of water, not a single piece of bread, not a single bag of flour entered Gaza. So starvation is part of this genocide. Intentional, organized, and meant to not only affect the physical status of people in Gaza, but their mental status. Imagine if you fast. I mean, I exercise fasting, but usually it's 12 to 14, maximum 16 hours, and then I break my fast during Ramadan. But imagine now children are barely having one meal per day. And most probably starting today, they're not even having that. One of my friends shared a video with me where the child, I think it's his nephew, is asking him for an egg. And he said, "You asked me yesterday for one, and I gave you the last one I have. So don't ask me again." There's no medicine. The inhuman and dehumanization of Palestinians in Gaza is breaking everybody's hearts. I saw a testimony yesterday from a doctor who worked at one of the hospitals, and he was among those who at least left to tell the story. And he said that Israel attacked Palestinians, but would not allow those who actually were campaigning and seeking shelter right in front of the hospital. And Israel kept bombing, not allowing even the staff of the hospital to step out and bury the dead. So they would sneak, running out to pull in the bodies. But throughout that attempt, it was raining. So people, imagine how many days, outside, being dead, not being buried. So their features, for those who at least still had features, were gone. And some were able to pull them in and literally bury them inside the hospital. But then he mentions something that was even more horrific than the first part of his story, is when he, with his colleagues, started hearing things. It was like, what was happening outside? So they sneaked out to look outside, fearing that they would be bombed as well. And what they saw was even more horrific, because the Israeli army was literally bulldozing the rest of the bodies outside. So, the sanctity of life, the right for every person who is killed, deceased, in whatever way, at least to be buried in dignity. And even that, people in Gaza were denied. There are a lot of stories that I'm sure you witness, and I hear a lot from my family. Babies. In the early days, everybody heard about the babies who were beheaded in Israel, when no such thing happened and no such proof of that took place. Yet, on a daily basis, there are videos, facts of Palestinian children in Gaza beheaded for no crime other than being Palestinians, being from Gaza. And yet the world is totally silent. Imagine bodies flying, not bodies of birds, but bodies of human beings, bodies of children. I saw another video yesterday of this woman who was shaking, and she was in so much distress. She mentioned how all her families were killed, her brother, her sister, with their families. But then she talks about her own experience. She's literally making coffee for her brother. Supposedly her two kids are playing outside with their father, and then she hears this boom. And then in a second, there were no walls. There was no house. She started calling. Her daughter, of course, was killed along with the father. She couldn't find the son. And eventually, people who were looking to rescue, they found the son almost a block away, hurt. Other stories of mothers finding the bodies of their kids torn apart. And yet, they're trying to have closure and bring their kids and bury them. So Israel is finding ways to continue not just dehumanizing Palestinians, especially in Gaza, but to literally eliminate their existence. Yesterday, the latest was some Israelis are calling to cancel the 200 shekel currency. I don't know if some of you went to, Israel-occupied Palestine. And it is not an economic move that would benefit Israel. It is actually a move to harm Palestinians. They claim that Hamas has a lot of this currency. But that is the only currency Palestinians are allowed to use, which means whatever money that is left with them, as if there is money left with them, will have no value. To buy that egg, if they can find it, to buy that piece of bread if they find it, to buy that flour if they can find it. So how many other ways will Israel find to keep causing harm, suffering to the Palestinians? And yet the world is watching in real time, and the world leadership have the audacity to show up at the funeral of the Pope, God rest his soul. As if they think by showing up they're honoring him. No, they're not. I prayed for that, for Pope Francis. And I mourned him, like all of you, because he, among many leaders who had no heart, no conscience, no faith, was the only one who stood up till the end, as Katerina mentioned, calling for the end of genocide, calling for ceasefire. During Ramadan, I heard from friends that I have who were seeking shelter in churches, Muslims, who were seeking shelters in churches in Gaza, that he was calling Palestinians on a daily basis. Give me one leader who was doing that. Not even the so-called Palestinian Authority leader, Abbas, who, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't represent me, as I know he doesn't represent many other Palestinians. So, sometimes I find myself in loss of words, and sometimes I find myself even in loss of tears. It's almost like when you cry so much, your body freezes. And I humble myself to God, and I force myself that no, I don't want this genocide that I'm witnessing on a daily basis to harden my heart or dry my tears, because I need them to continue to cleanse me as I need them to honor those in Gaza. What I listened as you were praying, and in Psalm 22, how people were asking God, like, we're suffering, we know, we're suffering. Where are you? A lot of people in Gaza, if not every single one in Gaza, is having that prayer. And I asked myself, how come they haven't lost their faith? I have faith, and I always argue with my sister, because my sister sometimes, she talks with God and she questions God, and I keep telling her, you can't talk to God like that. There has to be a level of humbleness and respect and knowing. But we're human beings. God created us. God knows our shortcomings. But I too ask God, not just why, because I know God has a reason. And I know God tests the faithful, and God does not burden anyone beyond their ability to take that burden. And those who are patient and persevere, and they continue their faith in God, their reward is with their Lord. And everybody that I ask in Gaza, that's what they say. Some of them tell me, especially in the early days, they were like, yes, there are doctors coming, perhaps Israel is not allowing medicine, but why are they not sending us mental health specialists? Because the pain is too much. The suffering is too much. And even for a person who has all the faith in the world, when you're on a daily basis witnessing what is happening in Gaza, not from far, but right there, living it on a daily basis. Sometimes, yes, you need someone to comfort you, someone to understand your pain and try to help you deal with it. I have to admit how much I'm grateful to each and every one of you. I am so grateful for Katerina and the team, and Frank and Bert and all the team who come every Monday. Because I used to take pictures and I used to take videos, and I would always ask permission, and I would send them to my family and friends in Gaza. And many, if not all, appreciated it. And they kept telling me, thank them for us, because it kept them strong. It kept them know that they're not forgotten. They know God is with them. They know God is testing them, and eventually the test will end. And the reward will come. But when the suffering takes time, you really need something to warm your heart and know that other people are with you. I actually, not even sure if I'm on time, but I want to have an exercise with you. We might not finish the exercise or even start it, but I would ask each and every one of you, as you stand up and call for ceasefire, and as you reach out to people you know, whether your family, your friends, your colleagues, and I ask each and every one of you to speak about Gaza. The facts are out there. And if you can't find those facts, follow me on Facebook, because that's all what I do, is just share facts and try to direct people to where the news is and where the suffering of the Palestinians are. But in the process, I want you to go back and pull the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Back in 1947, they started this. It's supposed to be basic 30 rights. And interesting how humans have to come together to put together such a list, and yet fail God in upholding it. There were other rights were added. It's almost like amendment to the universal human rights. But I want you to go back to just the basic 30, the first 30 rights. And I want you to go one by one and see if that applies to the Palestinian in general, not necessarily just in Gaza. And I assure you, not a single one applies. And Israel feels that they can continue disobeying God, because God orders all of us, not just, at least those of the Abrahamic faith, that when you save a life, you save humanity. But obviously, either they don't care about humanity, or, as they boldly stated it, they don't think Palestinians are humans. So we have to educate ourselves, and we have to challenge them, and we have to call for all of these rights to be upheld and implemented and allowed for Palestinians to have. Sooner or later, we're going to all stand in front of God, and we're going to be questioned. And I myself pray to God Almighty to, on a daily basis, to use me and not replace me. Use me to be His voice. Use me to be His hand. Use me to stand for what He ordained on all of us, so that I can have a clear conscience. And if He asks me, what have you done? I would say, God, you know what I have done, because you are my witness. Thank you, and God bless you.